All right, now we're going to talk about my second favorite critter, and that's the pocket gophers. Pocket gophers are found almost all over the western United States. They're a very adaptable animal. They can live in country that is rocky and clay, and you wonder how anything can make a living. And then they can also live in, of course, the lush alfalfa fields where times are really good. Again, because these are standalone presentations, you need to know that the difference between pocket gophers and ground squirrels is very important. The characteristics of pocket gophers being extremely exclusively underground, short tails, small eyes and ears, don't venture from their burrows much at all except to push dirt, and they're very solitary, as opposed to the ground squirrels, which are often seen running around on the ground. They're in colonies, they have hairy tails, bigger eyes and ears. Pocket gophers are small, 6 to 8 inches as adults. The ground squirrels are 9 to 15 inches as adults, so there's a real big size difference. Pocket gophers plug their holes, ground squirrels leave their holes open. All right, let's talk about pocket gophers now. They're called pocket gophers because they have these external cheek pouches. They're little pouches that they can put little pieces of root in, fur-lined pouches that they use to carry things around, and that's why they're called pocket gophers. They have exposed teeth. That is, their teeth are actually on the outside of their lips, and that's a good idea when you're primarily chewing through dirt and eating roots. Having your cutting teeth on the outside of your lips works real well. They've got digging claws on the front, large claws they dig with, small eyes and ears. Important characteristic are their fan-shaped mounds, the holes they use to push the dirt out of their tunnel system, and then they plug that hole with some dirt that they tamp in from the bottom to plug it up. They don't want things in their tunnel system. Pocket gophers are very territorial. You'll see a lot of mounds like this, thinking you must have a whole lot of pocket gophers. Much of the research has shown that most of the populations are less than 1 or 2 adults per acre. So you see all those mounds out there and you think you've got a whole bunch of them. It might only be 1 or 2 animals that are actually doing that. The exception, of course, is during the breeding season and when they have their young. Their subterranean system is rather elaborate, but yet everything has a purpose. There is a main runway that they do most of their traveling in, and then they have these lateral tunnels. And those lateral tunnels are just used to get rid of that dirt. As you can see, this tunnel system is going to make available an awful lot of dirt. It's got to go someplace. So all this soil gets pushed out of the top and then is put on the outside. And that's what we see out there. There's a main runway that usually runs just a little bit below the surface, a couple inches to a foot. And then there's several little storage areas where they put their clippings in. And then often there will be a deeper area where the young are born and where they spend time when they're inactive. They are active though all winter long. And this is what I was saying. They dig these tunnel systems and then they just push the dirt out on the outside. The tunnel system, the depth of it is very important on some of the control methods that I'm going to talk about. And best way to find that out is to actually probe around or to dig down and see where the main runway is actually found. I already talked about the external incisors and so forth, so now we can talk about some control methods. Habitat modification would be really tough because there's just nothing you can do there everywhere. But some of the cultural things also can be considered that we want to look at. Exclusion and repellents are things that people talk about, and I'll touch more on all this stuff, as well as the frightening devices, removal, and species-specific things. Okay, where am I here? The exclusion is the main thing because the habitat modification and cultural, there's not a whole lot that we can do. They're there, they're going to be there. You can have the cleanest garden, and all of a sudden there's going to be a pocket gopher pop up. But let's talk about exclusion. What's going on here? Okay, exclusion. I have seen some people, when they have bedded gardens or bedded plants, this ended up being a strawberry little bedded plant area, and they did have ground squirrel and kind of pocket gophers around the area a lot, and so they lined the bed with poultry wire before they put the soil in there. And that certainly is about the only way I know of that you could hope to ever exclude them. What's wrong with this, the way these slides are, but anyway, we talked about repellent. Let's talk about some of the removal things, repellents removal. First, I want to touch on some of the thoughts that people have about repellents. I know of none that work, I'll say that right off. They sell some ultrasonic devices that were tested and not proven to be effective. The one I really like is a plant. It's called Gopher Purge. And people say, yeah, you can plant this gopher purge there and it keeps the pocket gophers away. And that's exactly right. They won't come within about 6 inches of that plant. So that means you'd have to have an awful lot of gopher purge out there to keep pocket gophers away. So gopher purge, pocket gophers don't like, but it is certainly not practical in terms of thinking you can put gopher purge out there. I even know people that have planted along the line of it, thinking they would create a barrier, and the pocket gophers easily went underneath it and got into the yard. So it doesn't even work as a barrier. And then there's a little choppy guy. They sell these things that the wind blows, and when the guy starts hammering, it makes a vibration in the ground, and the pocket gophers don't like it. They don't, and they won't come within 6 inches of that thing. So obviously you're going to have an awful lot of the little choppy guys around if you're going to keep pocket gophers out. So bottom line is repellents have not proven to be a very effective way of controlling pocket gopher problems. Frightening devices and repellents just don't work for pocket gophers. Toxicants, now we're talking about removal methods. There are some toxicants that are labeled. As I mentioned before, strychnine can only be used below ground. And strychnine is labeled for pocket gopher control. It's difficult to get in the right place though, because if you put it in their lateral runway where they're pushing the dirt out, it'll just get buried as they push the dirt out. Or they won't ever come back there unless they're pushing some more dirt out. So you basically have to place it by hand in that main runway. And that can be done using just a small shovel after you probe around with a 1/4-inch rod to find that main runway, and then you can hand place it into the burrow. There's a burrow builder applicator which can be used for large scale placement of strychnine below ground, and that works on some large operations. I've seen it used very successfully in orchards. This is the hand placed tool they use. You can also just take a piece of pipe. After you poke the hole and find that main runway, you can use a piece of pipe to dump the strychnine down into the main runway, or this thing is made, you can probe with it and then push the button and it deposits a little bit of the strychnine there. This is a burrow builder. Burrow builders are made of a tube called a torpedo tube that actually makes the artificial runway. There's a cutter that goes before that to open up the soil, and then after it makes a tunnel, there's a wheel that presses it down, and as that shank goes through the ground, there is a measured amount of strychnine which is dropped off periodically into that main runway. The way that it works as it's pulled along is you're trying to intersect the existing pocket gopher tunnels. Remember I said how territorial they were? So they come across this artificial tunnel and they explore it looking for the occupant so they can drive them out of their territory. And when they do, they encounter that strychnine and take some of that, and that's when they die. But it takes advantage of their desire to keep intruders out of their system. I should also mention that the toxicants work good in certain soil situations because if you're using the burrow builder, you must have soil conditions that allow you to make a tunnel. If it's too wet, all you're doing is creating a water pipe. And if it's too dry, it just caves in, and all you're doing is actually plowing the ground. So you also have to put it at the right depth, and that means going and digging down and finding out what depth you want to set that shank at so that it's making a tunnel at the depth that will intersect other pocket gopher tunnels. Fumigants, phostoxin, as I mentioned before, is labeled for pocket gopher use. There are even some gas cartridges that say they can be used for pocket gophers. I don't recommend fumigants for any pocket gophers. And the reason for that is their tunnel system is too close to the surface. And it is very difficult to seal it off to the point that you can get the gas to distribute itself throughout their tunnel system. So fumigants, there are fumigants labeled for pocket gophers, the gas cartridges, but I don't recommend using them because they just don't work. You've got to get it in the tunnel system. Probably the method that is used most often and is really quite effective is just the use of traps. As I mentioned, there's not many pocket gophers out there, even when you see a lot of those mounds, and trapping can be very effective. There's a new trap that, relatively new, I think it's been out now about 15 years. It's called the DK1 gopher trap. It's made in Henrietta, Oklahoma. You can find it online easily, a DK1 gopher trap, and it works great. And one of the reasons that it works great is because you can use the lateral tunnel. It's very cost effective, much more than people would think. In fact, there are some golf courses in Kansas that hire high school kids to control their pocket gophers. And these kids are able to locate a hole, probe out the main that lateral runway, put the gopher trap down in the hole, and then be gone. And it takes them less than 5 minutes to do that whole thing. And it is a very effective way. This is what the DK1 looks like. I'll show you another picture of it in a moment. But what's different about the DK1, as I said, it can be used in the lateral tunnel. Now, here's that tunnel system. And this is important to know so you understand how to control pocket gophers. You have the main runway, then you have this lateral runway, and the lateral runway is what they just put dirt out. So when he's done making this tunnel, pushes all that dirt out, he has no reason to ever go back there. So sometimes people will take a trap and set it there and plug it up. Well, he's never going to come back. In the old days, we used to always recommend using these traps that were meant to be used in open settings, where you had to put them in the main runway. To do that, you dig down through the surface, locate that main runway, put one trap going one way and one trap going the other way in case he's coming from a different direction. Then you have to put a piece of cardboard or something over the top of this hole to make it dark in there. Because remember, they don't want snakes or any kind of intruders to get into their holes. And so when a pocket gopher feels air current or a temperature change or sees light, the first thing it does is tries to plug up that light or that air. In doing so, they will bury any traps that you put into a lateral tunnel because they're pushing dirt ahead of themselves, and it just buries that trap. And so that's why these kinds of traps didn't work in an open lateral hole. And as I said, if it was closed, they have no reason to go there. Then they developed the DK1 gopher trap, and it is designed for the pocket gopher to be pushing dirt ahead of itself. It's meant for that dirt to go through there, and then as he pushes on it, then he triggers it. And that's why it works in that lateral tunnel. When he's looking up through that lateral tunnel in that open air, all he's thinking of doing is pushing dirt ahead of himself to get that hole plugged. And so if you put the trap in that lateral hole and you're leaving it open, and he comes up to that lateral hole and you catch him. It's much easier to find that lateral hole too than it is to find the main runway that's underneath the ground. I think that's all I've got on the pocket gophers there. I need to show you some things about pocket gophers to help you understand how the trap goes. So let's put that other camera on, number 2. Is that number 2 camera on yet? Why is it showing that up there? Oh, I think there it is. All right, here we are. All right. First of all, I mentioned when you're probing for the probing for the pocket gophers, you can use something like this, and this is just a 1/4-inch rod that you can push down into the ground, and you're trying to find that main runway, and then you push it into the ground, and when you get to the main runway, it goes in rather easily, and then you know you found it. And this is important to use something like this if you use the burrow builder, or if you're going to use hand placement of strychnine. That's what you use there. And then just a piece of pipe can be used to get the strychnine in there. This is the old kind of traps that I was talking about that you used to put in the ground, and they would be coming from both directions, so that when the pocket gopher is going along, I'm not going to set it now, I'll catch myself again. When the pocket gopher is going along either direction, you would catch him, but you had to tie a string to it, put it up on the surface, and it didn't work as good. And the DK1 gopher trap. People would think I've got stock in this company, and I don't, but it's just a real good product that really works well. And I do have to admit that there's been several times in my career when I was working with trappers and showing them how to work this, and we actually would catch a pocket gopher while I'm talking, and it really helps my credibility, so that's certainly one of the reasons that I really did like them. But the nice thing about the DK1 is that you can unhook this spring, which allows you to set the trap without the tension of the spring. And this spring is put over the end of the jaws to hold them open, and then once you have that set, then you can set the spring so that it is now activated. You can set a hair trigger on here so that he only has to bump it a little bit. And when the pocket gopher comes through the trap, he comes through this way. And when he bumps this, pushes dirt against it, it catches him, and they work real well. It's important to anchor this down, or to at least tie it, so that if you get a snake in there, which I never have, but the potential's there, or if a pocket gopher doesn't die right away, you don't want him to drag your trap in. It's also very important when you set this before you set the hair trigger, that you put it down in the hole and kind of make sure it fits in there good, so that when you put the set trap in there, you can get it in there without triggering it. But anyways, those work real well. Those sets are about the best thing you can use for the pocket gophers. Okay, that's all I have on the pocket gophers. So we will now go to the next species.